This is the greatest trap in 2b2t history, and in the oldest Anarchy server in Minecraft, where thousands have died to lava casts, withers, and lag machines, this meant something. The goal was simple, to get over 50 players trapped at one time to break the record for the largest player gathering on the server. But with hacked clients and the best gear in Minecraft, trapping that many players was gonna be nearly impossible. Welcome to the labyrinth. To understand why the labyrinth was created, you first need to understand the heart of 2b2t, spawn. It's where every player's journey begins, whether you're a veteran who joined over 10 years ago or a brand new player. And unlike most Minecraft servers, spawn on 2b2t is anything but welcoming. It's a complete wasteland, obliterated by years and years of griefing. And even though it's already filled with lava cast and broken highways, it doesn't stop players from thinking even bigger. And a specific group on 2b2t called the Guardsmen began thinking, what if instead of small traps scattered throughout spawn, there was one structure? One massive, inescapable creation that wouldn't just work on one player, but anyone who entered it. This was the original idea that would soon evolve into the labyrinth. The idea of trapping players inside an obsidian structure on 2b2t was not new. From as early as 2016, veteran players had trapped new players in obsidian boxes to prevent them from escaping spawn. The Guardsmen had a new idea though, and it was simple, but devastating. Create a massive, inescapable obsidian maze. Not only that, but they were planning to trap Elder Guardians inside, which gives the player Mining Fatigue 3, making it impossible to escape. Even the best diamond pickaxe in the game became useless, because breaking a single obsidian block would take minutes, and breaking the entire wall was gonna be nearly impossible. But for years, the concept remained no more than a theory, and to be fair, taking on such a project would take forever. Building something that would take a ton of obsidian, an incredible amount of time, and the kind of dedication few players on 2b2t possessed. But in 2020, everything changed. Duplication glitches started flooding the server with obsidian. Large groups of players that had motivation now had the materials. And as the years passed, the culture of spawn had become so toxic, so destructive, that the time seemed right for something that you could never come back from. It was around this time in 2020 that the concept of the labyrinth finally took shape. Unlike the obsidian tombs from 2016, the labyrinth had to hold enough players to break the record. A structure filled with corridors, dead ends, false exits, and endless loops. And the best part was, there wasn't going to be any exit to the maze. It wasn't just a trap at this point, it was literally psychological warfare. Nobody would be able to mine out unless they were randomly carrying milk buckets, and with so many different passageways all so close together, they wouldn't even be able to teleport out with chorus fruit. But constructing the labyrinth was going to be no small feat. The group worked tirelessly, often under the threat of being attacked themselves, because after all, it was just outside of the spawn region, and even millions of blocks out on 2b2t can be unsafe. They began mining tons of obsidian and using dupes to speed the process up. Then, block by block, they began building the walls. The outer layer of the labyrinth looked like nothing more than a gigantic obsidian box, but inside, it was going to be far more intricate. Corridors twisting into long, dark passages, some leading to dead ends, others looping back on themselves. And a few even appeared to lead to an exit, only to drop players down into even more tunnels. At the very center of the structure, Elder Guardians were held in water chambers, and their presence meant that anyone who entered was immediately afflicted with mining fatigue. With the potion effect active, players wouldn't be able to rely on any tools. Pickaxes felt useless, and breaking the obsidian walls were completely out of the question. The only way to escape was going to be to die, but none of the players would want to lose all their items, so hopefully they would stay alive long enough to break the record. Once the outline of the maze was complete, the group still needed a way to lure the player base into the trap and make sure they stayed long enough to achieve the record. So they came up with an idea to hold an event on the server. This is relatively normal for 2b2t, where there's fight clubs, subs, griefings, killing new players, and other normal 2b2t things. So when they began creating posters and putting them up all around spawn, it wasn't really suspicious to any of the players. Most actually wanted to come to the event because unless you're in the spawn region, you don't really see too many players. But whether over 50 people would join the event or not was going to be the real question. It was finally Friday night, which meant it was almost time for the event to start. Everything was planned and ready when the Guardsmen realized all the Elder Guardians they had collected had been killed earlier that day, and their plan to break the record was hanging by a thread. They quickly gathered the group together and rushed to a nearby ocean monument to get 4 more. And lucky for them, they had kept all the rail systems used to transport the previous Guardians, and they managed to gather the new ones just in time. After that, they still had a little bit of time before the event, so they headed to the portal in the center of the maze and began meeting the first players who had seen their posters. And since they had milk buckets prepared for themselves to mine out, they went into the maze just like the others, quickly mined out, and began enjoying the chaos that they had created. As it got closer and closer to the time of the event, more and more players began walking through the portal into the labyrinth, and because no one could escape, they were getting close to reaching the goal of over 50 players in one location on the server with an infinitely spread out player base. Most people travel millions of blocks away just to build a simple base, and yet at this moment there were almost 50 people trapped inside the labyrinth. However, because of the players' hacked clients, they were able to tell where all the Elder Guardians were pretty quickly, and slowly they began mining through the one layer of obsidian to kill them. And after almost 30 minutes, there was only one Elder Guardian left, but the players inside were slowly becoming normal 2b2t players and began fighting once again. The amount of time the group had before they began losing players was quickly decreasing, and they still needed a couple more to officially break the record. For many who walked through the portal, the experience was terrifying, and as word spread of the labyrinth, the community reacted with a mix of horror and fascination. Some players despised it, looking at it as an ultimate act of griefing. Other players praised it. To them, the labyrinth was a masterpiece and perfectly captured what it meant to be a player on 2b2t. It wasn't necessarily about killing everyone who entered, but rather creating an experience that everyone who walked through the portal would remember. To trap them, confuse them, and leave them with a story they'd never forget. In about 35 minutes into the event, and over 40 players trapped inside the labyrinth, they slowly began losing their minds and realizing there was no escape. So in classic 2b2t fashion, the players started fighting, placing withers, and definitely making the event memorable. And even though they knew they wouldn't be able to escape the maze, some managed to escape the other players by using their chorus fruits to teleport into other tunnels. Others weren't so lucky and ended up being a victim of the labyrinth. The labyrinth was never meant to be fair, and it was never meant to be beaten. It was meant to do something that had never been done in the long history of 2b2t. And after 51 minutes, the labyrinth officially had a total of 52 players, breaking the record in classic 2b2t chaos.